Hey gang, John Backrell here with your Lake St. Clair Fishing Report, brought to you by Sportsmen's Direct. It is Friday, July 21st, and sorry we didn't get the report out yesterday, but we got a little tied up with things, but we definitely wanted to get one done here for the weekend for all you folks that rely on us for accurate information out here for Lake St. Clair. So, water temp at Belle Isle this morning when I looked was 74 degrees. It's been holding 73 all week. So 74 doesn't surprise me much. It just means that we're into very, very, very stable water temps, and pretty stable weather altogether, which means that these fish have really just kind of set up into a very, very strong pattern out there on the lake, which has meant very, very, very consistent fishing for you guys. So let's start out with some of the new stuff going on. Probably the biggest new thing going on right now is sturgeon season has opened, which makes guys like Spencer and Derek very, very happy. And I hope I get out of this very, very thing, because I don't know why I'm jumping into that. But so yeah, if you're a sturgeon fisherman, you've been waiting all season to get out there and go chase these dinosaur fish. And Spencer and Derek went out the other night, and I think they went like 3 for 5. I don't think they got anything giant, but they got some great fish. And I mean, there's not too many places on the planet that you can go out and do this. It also makes charter captains like Garrett Samsel and Michael Downey from Relentless Grind incredibly happy too this time of the year, because it just opens up another opportunity to get clients out there for some amazing fishing. And there's not as many charter captains that target these toothless critters out here, up in, I should say, mostly up in the St. Clair River system. So if you're looking to get out and do that, maybe give these guys a shout. If you need information to get a hold of them, contact the store and we can hook you guys up. Mayfly hatch has slowed down dramatically now, and so for all of you folks that just can't catch fish during the mayfly hatch, so that excuse should be done now, because the mayfly hatch has really slowed down, and I'll probably start turning the front lights back on at the store at night. Although we're still going to get some sporadic hatches probably all the way till October. We haven't seen them little teeny tiny mini mayflies yet, which historically are the last ones to hatch, and I'll see those sometimes in September. Anyways, the bulk of the mayfly hatch is over. Don't scream at me if you walk out one morning and everything is covered again, because that could very well happen. But it's definitely slowed down. We're past the peak on that now, and it should not be as much of a factor. Now, even though the mayflies are done hatching, there is a significant bug hatch going out there on the lake for you folks that have been out there, especially if you've been out there on the day where there's no wind. You know that there's still caddisfly hatch going on big time, which are those little moth guys that are out there with the long antennas that don't really bother anything except they get all over and make you crazy. There's all the little green and yellow little kind of, I guess we always called them fuzz noses as kids. I don't know what the technical name is for them, but they're harmless as well. They just kind of fly around and land on everything, but they will drive you crazy because they walk all over and get in your ears and your nose and behind your glasses and all that crazy stuff. And you also got those little horsefly guys, which I don't know where they come from, but those are the nasty ones because those little guys bite. So with all that said, with all those hatches going on out there, it makes for some very happy bait fish, but it can make for some very unhappy fishermen. Or if you're a lady and you decide to go out there just in a bikini alone, you're going to go crazy. So my advice to you is bring clothing that you can cover yourself up. Sun buffs work great for keeping the sun off, but they also keep those bugs from crawling in your ears and everything if you happen to get into one of those areas that's loaded with the bugs. You know, long sleeve sun shirts, and you know, bring a pair of light pants or even sweatpants with you. You know, if you don't have all the bugs out there, then no problem, you don't need it. But if I don't tell you about it and you head out there and you're not prepared for it, you're going to be cursing. So they will drive you crazy if you get into one of those areas that are just loaded with them. Sometimes you'll even have to fire up the boat and move just to get rid of them all, blow them out of the boat, and then come back, and then hopefully you get a little bit of a reprieve. So that's one of the tricks that we'll use out there sometimes if the bugs get too crazy. Now, let's talk a little bit about Well, let's talk about the bugs, because even though I started talking about the bugs, now I'm going to take it into another level, and we're going to talk about the biomass out there on the lake and why the fish are where they are. And a lot of it has to do with the bugs, because the bugs are kind of the baseline for everything, okay? They're the baseline for what the bait fish are feeding on this time of the year, which means that you got all of your shiners and everything out there. You just got tons of bait fish, and everything feeds on those bait fish, and it just, the whole food chain revolves around those bugs, basically. So you've got perch out there, you've got smallies out there, you got walleye out there, which means you also got muskie out there as well. And I've heard a lot of guys that, you know, been talking about how tough the muskie bite has been. Well, it hasn't been real tough for the guys that aren't necessarily fishing for muskies, because if you're a guy out there trolling for walleye and you're trolling just outside of the group of boats that's fishing for perch, then you know that the muskies are there eating the walleyes or eating the smallies or eating the perch, because they're all right there in the same areas. Muskies and biomass, okay? My buddy Dennis Anderson sent me a picture. He was out on Mr. Muskie charters this week, and I mean, if you look at this picture, it says everything about the biomass and muskies and about the fishery out here on Lake St. Clair. Just gorgeous picture, gorgeous fish. And yeah, the muskies are by those perch, which are by those walleye, which are by those bass as well. So, you know, when I talk about the different fishing opportunities out there, like where the perch bite is, if you're a smallie fisherman, you should be paying attention to that too, because these smallies really key on those perch. And what we're seeing out there, especially when I look at my sales of like those perch pounder rigs, the guys are buying tons of perch pounder rigs, not because they just wear out naturally, but they're buying a ton of those perch pounder rigs because when they double up on 3-pound smallies 2 at a time on one of those perch pounder rigs, that perch pounder rig a lot of times is trashed, so they got to replace it. And that is happening a lot out there, okay? So the guys that are catching perch are also catching a lot of smallies, which for you guys that are chasing smallies, you ought to be paying attention to that. Same thing for you walleye guys. They're catching walleyes mixed in with those perch out there as well, right? So wherever that biomass is, wherever those bug hatches really are going on, you're going to find everything, okay? And so that's kind of a basic principle out there on the lake, is you'll find all of those fish. You'll find huge concentrations. Now, they may be in little localized subgroups out there, right? So the walleye, the big main pot of walleye, may be keying more towards a weed bed, or maybe keying towards the structure of the channel more, but they're all going to be out in that area. The other kind of rule of thumb that you pay attention to, or at least that I learned a long time ago, and actually from a guy named Dave Gens, and if you're an ice fisherman, you know who Dave Gens is. But Dave said, early on when I started fishing tournaments, he made a statement at one of the seminars, and one of the things that he told everybody, because everybody was struggling on this new lake, but Dave he's kind of like puts everything together, and he's kind of a global, he has kind of a global mindset about finding fish. And one of the key things he said a long time ago in that seminar was that there's always a deep bite and there's always a shallow bite. And that just stays in my head, and it's always there, and I always think about it. But one of the other key aspects to that I've learned is that that's a relative term, right? So deep and shallow are relative to not only what body of water you're fishing on, but it's relative to where you specifically are on that body of water. Meaning that if you're up on the St. Clair River, your deep and your shallow bite may only be 100 yards apart, right? So those fish might only have to transition up the channel bank and up onto a little flat along the shoreline, or it could be an area like out on the main lake of Lake St. Clair, which could be that channel, and then it could be a flat up off on one of the sides of the channel, so you got your deep and your shallow going on. Or it could be, you know, bigger movements like down along the mile roads, where those fish can go up into 5, 6, 7 feet of water as your shallow bite, and they may drop back out to 12 or 14 feet, right? So it's a relative term. Why do I bring that up? Because there has been a significant shallow bite, and there almost always is, early in the morning, all up and down the lake, right? So there is a transition a lot of times for these fish from deep to shallow. And it's a daily pattern. It happens in the morning. It happens again in the evenings. A lot of times it's water temperature driven. So I'm talking about these water temps right down at Belle Isle, 74 degrees, right? So 74 maybe in that main channel, and then it might get cooler as you get up towards the St. Clair River where it's dumping in up there. But it's also it's going to be more pronounced temperature change, like down in the flats or up in Anchor Bay, right, where your shallows might warm up during the day into the mid 80s, depending on sunshine and wind direction and all that kind of stuff. So that can generate that shallow and deep bite. So I only bring that up because it's kind of just, I'd rather teach you guys how to find fish rather than try to send you out there onto spots. And if I can get you thinking this way and putting all these pieces together, then you can make those moves and those adjustments during the day, on any given day, and you can be a lot more successful rather than just going out to one spot and then you come in and you say, well, the bite stopped and they only bit for an hour. Well, probably not. The fish probably actually just kind of moved. They feed a lot, and they'll feed all day long in many cases. They don't always just completely turn off, but you have to be able to follow these fish around, and a lot of times it's a difference between a deep bite and a shallow bite. So anyways, wanted to bring that up. You know, if I can, well, I'll talk about it now too. So we're talking about deep bite and shallow bite and the transition and water temps and all that. If you look at the makeup of Lake St. Clair, it's very unique, okay? You've got the main river channel coming down. It flows out through these fingers, the north channel, middle channel, north channel, south channel, middle channel, right? Where the water's flowing out kind of like into the Anchor Bay area and down onto the main shipping channel. That water comes out, it's always this time of the year going to be much cooler than the main lake temperature, right? It reverses when we get into the fall, and it's kind of reversed in the springtime, but right now that's cooler water coming into the area, coming down into the lake. So that water comes out and it kind of spreads out as it goes into the lake. But in those areas, those are kind of key areas, right? And you've got weed lines out there, you've got deeper water, which brings in that deep bite, shallow bite scenario, right? And so those are all factors in where you guys would want to set up that, and along with the wind direction for the day, right? So, you know, just trying to help you guys piece together when you come in and you ask me where should I go today. These are all the different factors that I look at on any given day to try to direct you out there. So I'm trying to help you right now to maybe be able to direct yourself a little bit more, to give you kind of a broad sense of what I look at right now this time of the year. But anyway, so that water's coming down, it's cooler, you got weed lines out there, you got deep water in some of those areas if you look at your different maps. And so those are kind of key things to look at. If you're a small boat fisherman, you're going to look at wind direction too, right? If you got a real strong north wind, you're not going to go fish out in the middle of the lake if you're in a 16-foot boat. But you might be able to go out off of Anchor Bay or launch in off of one of the northern areas and then get out and fish one of those weed lines out there on that north end. You're going to have some of the same things going on out there as you do out in that middle of the lake bite that's going on right now with the perch. So anyways, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, and I had a map up here. It kind of shows you what I'm talking about. But I'm just kind of trying to open up your horizons a little bit so that if you can't go fish out in the middle of the lake where this big perch bite is going on right now, where there's a lot of activity, you can still think about other areas on the lake where maybe you can go, especially with a smaller boat, and still be very successful. Whether it's perch, whether it's walleye, whether it's smallies. Again, some of these areas are going to focus the biomass in those different areas and are going to make for some really, really great fishing. And it just gives you other opportunities. So let's talk a little bit more specifically now about that perch bite I just mentioned out in the middle of the lake. That bite out there by the St. Clair Light is just still going gangbusters, okay? Probably draw a circle around the St. Clair Light, 2-mile radius, and I've had reports from guys in that area within a couple of miles of the St. Clair Light that are just been going out and consistently catching high quality perch out there. Sometimes there's a lot of small fish mixed in, sometimes there's not. And again, you need to move around a little bit on those weed beds. Don't get stuck in one area just because you're catching, you know, every 20th fish as a keeper. I know sometimes it's hard to leave fish to find fish, but you might be surprised if you do that. If the bite is really going, that's kind of the time to maybe try to move and find some areas that have just more bigger fish. With that said, that area as well is still there are a ton of smallmouths in that area as well, okay? So if you're a smallmouth fisherman, it may be time to get out there and cash in on that smallie bite that is going on out there in that deep water up and down the channel bank. These guys that are catching perch are also catching lots of smallies. Walleyes as well. There's a concentration of walleyes just south and east of that St. Clair Light. I'm sure there's concentration of fish west of that St. Clair Light too. Use your electronics. Find those weed beds. Watch for those fish. Find those weed beds, find those edges of those weed lines, and you're going to find all the above. You're going to find perch, you're going to find walleyes, you're going to find smallies, and you're going to find muskies out in those areas as well. If that's where the biomass is, they're all going to be there. Doesn't mean it may be the best place on the lake, but there's going to be, those different populations are going to be in those areas, and they're going to be on, okay? So, talk a little bit about the St. Clair River bite. That is definitely slowed down up there a little bit. I talked with one of the guys up at Anderson Pro Bait. He said one of the better areas right now is out in front of the Black, but they're definitely getting a lot smaller fish up there right now. And I think that's mostly because a lot of times, I mean, the lake will usually warm up big time by this time during the year, and it hasn't. So we're still only in the low 70s. We do have a big warm up, looks like coming later in the week, but low 70s, and then you get out here into the main lake, and it's even cooler yet, especially down deep. And these fish don't have a reason to necessarily push up into the river. They're just going to stage on these areas by the outflow of the river. You got comfortable water temps, you got lots of bait, lots of food for them, so they're all just going to hang out there. So, and that's what's going on right now. So we have just tremendous fishing out here right now for the bulk of the lake. Whether you're, keying in on that shallow water smallmouth bite early in the morning, or whether you're going out there out in the middle of the lake, out by the St. Clair Light, and taking advantage of the bite that's going on out there. I mean, we've just got very stable conditions, and it hasn't been super hot, so we're just kind of in this nice, consistent pattern. We'll see if that changes later next week when we get into what's supposed to be a big warm-up. But if it doesn't last real long and it doesn't push the temperatures up real high, I don't think it's going to change anything at all. But right now we're in real stable conditions. If you look at the weather forecast, I'm alluded to that going forward. This weekend looks absolutely gorgeous, okay? And then next week it looks like there's going to be a big warm-up coming. If it does happen, there's going to be some thunderstorms going on with that, so pay attention. But right now for the weekend, looks like we got real stable conditions. There's some great bites going on, whether it's shallow or deep. That bite out there in the middle of the lake out by the St. Clair Light is going phenomenally. So take advantage of that, guys. If you have a chance, get out, take advantage of the great weather and the great fishing we got on Lake St. Clair. Hey, if you like this video content and you want to get updated as soon as the next video is out there, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon, and you'll get notified as soon as the next video is up.